must concern you somewhat that horse racing has been brought into this light with the Competitions Commission. It has to have a bearing on you. Doesn't matter which province you race in. It's of concern. How have you looked at this whole Competitions Commission and that which has been around it?
Look, I have a very simple philosophy. You know, I believe in simple logic. When you deal with the analysis of a problem, if you can't apply simple logic, then you know what, you're going to go on a journey, and guess what, you'll go around in a circle and simple logic will prevail at the end. Now let's look at this whole process with Phumelela and the merger and so on. You will remember that I was the one who triggered the debate in terms of, you know, the split with Gold Circle in Durban. Not because I think that it was Gold Circle in Durban that was bad, but that I thought that the relationship had turned so sour that it was bad for racing in the country, that we were throwing our toys out of the cot and, you know, all our laundry out of the basket, and it wasn't good for racing.
Bad karma.
Very bad karma, but besides that, you know, it was a case for a divorce. Now, having said that, I've always been of the opinion that there should be one single operator in the country that manages the gaming side. The sport of horse racing is not a regulatory condition that you have to comply to. In the case of Phumelela, they started to create a gaming company which was specific in terms of what they wanted to achieve. They wanted to achieve a corporate environment where before the gaming side vested with the sporting side, and that created all sorts of problems, inefficiencies, and also it created regulatory problems, hence the reason why the government insisted in them corporatizing racing in Gauteng. I think they've done a very good job at it, you know. Quite frankly, their stakes are higher, they've made it a lot, they've popularized the sport much better, because, you know, even I want to race in Gauteng now and then. So now let's deal with this problem that you have with the competitions board. Your question was, why is this happening? I think the reason why it's happening is because we haven't dealt with the problem. And the problem that we have at the moment is that certain people think that they personally have an entitlement. And yes, you know, we're in a process of corrective action since 1994, where the government took over and said there has been a process where there's been a lot of abuse in terms of black people, and therefore there has to be a corrective action process which will start to level the playing fields, because otherwise you're going to have chaos. Chaos in the sense that there'll be too many have-nots, and you know what, you can see in other countries where you've seen the Arab Spring, you've seen the South American thing, it's a volatile environment. So you've got to take your hat off to the Mandelas and Mbekis and the ANC for trying to put in a process of corrective action which has worked in many ways, otherwise we would have had a Zimbabwe on our hands.
Sure.
Mugabe had the opportunity to do the same as we did in this country. He didn't do it, and guess what? When the chips were down, he sidestepped the whole issue and he started to say, okay, you guys can now invade the farms and take over and do what you want to. We don't want that situation here. I mean, I was part of the whole process of the affirmative procurement process in public works, where that sort of problems were dealt with in a very, very focused way in terms of affirmative action, affirmative procurement, where there were a need for regulatory process to intervene. Now in this case, it's very simple. If you want a gaming license, whether you're a casino, a slot operator or a horse operator, it has to go through the regulatory process where you're forced to comply with the conditions of license, where you have to accept that you need black empowerment. whether it's in terms of a scorecard or whether it's in terms of just black empowerment in terms of equity, but every province has that and the national government has that too. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that entitlement is to black empowerment. You can't come as an individual and say, I'm entitled to that. That's not true. And even if you're black empowerment, your entitlement is there, but you have to contribute. You can't expect to piggyback and you be used as a window dresser, like it's happened in many cases, but it hasn't lasted. You have to put your hand in your pocket, or you have to go to the bank and have it geared so that, you know what, you can have a bona fide stake that has been forced by the government to allow you to participate as black empowerment.
A sustainable business plan, in other words.
Whichever way you want to look at it. Some of them are not sustainable. You see, the problem that I have in racing is that white people feel guilty. And they do things because they have to, not because they want to. And it's never sustainable. It's always come back to haunt us. Look in Natal. I mean, I can tell you stories about what happened there that will make your hair raise. Some of those guys that were on our board are now sitting in jail. So hello, if you want to ride a tiger, make quite sure it doesn't get hungry, because you have to feed it all the time if you're doing it because you have to and not because you want to. I would like to believe that there's another side to this debate, and that's the sporting side. You know, the sporting side is owning a horse, breeding a horse, or getting involved in the environment of the sport. There's no regulatory process where the government tells you, you cannot own a horse without me approving it. Where the government tells you need black empowerment to own a horse or breed a horse. It's very simple. When you want to own a horse, you've got to put your hand in your pocket and dig deep and make quite sure you can afford it.
Hence the original name of the sport.
Exactly. If you want to breed a horse, you've got to even dig deeper, because you know what? It's not a cheap game.
No guarantees.
And you must do it because you love it. You want to do it. I am in horse racing, not because I have to do it, because I want to do it. I enjoy it. I'm passionate about it. It costs me a lot of money. And guess what? It's like any other thing that you do where you enjoy it. Whether you have a boat or an aircraft, if you think you can afford it and you enjoy it, then you know what? You spend the money to do it. And that's the problem that we have in horse racing. We have embraced arguments improperly. We argue with individuals about how bad their track record is in terms of purchases, in terms of payments, and then say, you know what, you don't qualify because, you know, you have been delinquent. I'm saying those people doesn't deserve a platform, because there's a very simple argument as I've just put to you. The one is a regulatory process, and the other one is the sporting environment. In the sporting side, I've said you don't need to comply. There's no compliance. In the regulatory side, it's very clear. It is a corrective action introduced by the government to level the playing fields so that black people or black empowerment benefits from it. But it doesn't mean that you must window dress or you have an entitlement. The business still have to have a sustainable plan. If it hasn't got a sustainable plan, then you know what? We're investing in mediocrity. Then before you know it, all of these empowerment initiatives will collapse. And it's as simple as that, Andrew. That's my opinion.